What is crack-a-lackin', fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Favale coming at you with my certified fantabulous and thermonuclear AF co-host, Mr. Grant Hughes. This is part 6 of 6 of our 2023 NBA offseason grades. Go check out all the other divisions. They are on our YouTube and podcast pages. And hey, if you're new, subscribe, like, comment on all our videos on YouTube to help the algo love us back. Make sure you're subscribing to both Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and writing reviews for Apple and providing 5-star ratings on both Apple and Spotify. That helps us out as well. If you've done all those things, consider sharing an episode with a friend, family member, acquaintance, random person on the street, telling people about us. Share our short clip videos we post on our socials, where you can find us at HardwoodKnocks on Twitter, at HardwoodKnocks on TikTok, at Hardwood_Knocks on Instagram. Join our Discord. The link to that's in the podcast and YouTube description. We have lots of fun combos in there. And if you would like to support the show even further, please buy our merch. The link to our TeePublic store is in the podcast and YouTube descriptions too. Grant, I talked to you 30 seconds ago. How are you doing?
Had a big development, actually. Not kidding. If you're watching on YouTube, great. If not, we'll just explain it. Check out what I found in my house here. I'm holding up a thermonuclear AF sticker that Dan sent me with one of the first orders of our merch. And I wasn't sure what happened to it. And I mostly didn't want to answer questions from my kids about what AF stood for. It was just in my office. So I must have taken it out of the order and put it in the office before I gave them all the other stickers. So, I mean, I know they know these words. I'm sure that
I'm poisoning the Hughes household.
The antidote was I found it. So no poison. I'm doing great because I don't have to explain what AF stands for to my kids.
Or you could just tell them it's awesomely fantabulous.
Yeah, well, that's true. They do enjoy the certified. I got one of them a certified fantabulous shirt, and it is in the rotation.
I support you and Adam Frommel, friend of the podcast and former co-host, putting your kids as Hardwood Knocks billboards. I love it.
Well, because otherwise you have to pay for advertising. I feel like this is just this is
like a nice work around the child labor laws. Like you're not really putting them to work, but you are putting their likeness to work.
I spend a lot of money on them, but I don't pay them anything. So the least they can do is advertise. We got the Southwest Division. Shall we? Mini preamble. I gave you the Windhorse finger there before I said preamble. C is a good grade. You're passing. We say this most of the time when we remember to do this. C is not a knock, and extrapolate from there. Like anything below that, maybe not so great. Anything above that, very good. And we're trying to be attentive to each team's individual circumstances and their opportunities and lack thereof in some cases when handing out these grades. Is that a sufficient preamble, you think, for
11 of 10? Absolutely no notes. It was perfect. It's so good that I can't wait for you to read us what's happening with the Dallas Mavericks.
All right, that is where we start. The big one, signed Kyrie Irving for 3 years and $120 million with a player option on that third year, which will be his age 33 season. After that, they acquired Grant Williams, structured ultimately as a sign and trade with Boston, 2 future seconds from the Spurs for Reggie Bullock, 2 future seconds and 2030 swap rights going to the Spurs. That's all convoluted, but basically they got Grant Williams. Signed Seth Curry for 2 years and $8 million. Signed Dante Exum for 2 years, 6.15. Why are you laughing? I feel like that's
basically they got Grant Williams. The 2030 swap feels like more than an asterisk.
As I'm reading, and I'm just like, no, it's Grant Williams. That's all we need to know about Dallas. Re-signed Dwight Powell for 3 years, $12 million with a player option. Traded number 10 and Davis Bertans to Oklahoma City for number 12, which turned into Derek Lively the second. Also acquired Rashawn Holmes and number 24, which became Olivier Maxence Prosper from the Kings, basically for cash, using the TPE from the Bertans trade, more or less. They lost/remain unsigned Justin Holiday, Dan, Frank Ntilikina, no longer a Dallas Maverick. Christian Wood.
The Hornets are about to win and hang a banner for the in-season tournament, I think, thanks to Frank Ntilikina.
I don't think we mentioned Frank Ntilikina in the Hornets podcast. So whatever
happened like the night before, or actually it was days, because my mentions, I love that our brand is strong. The Hardwood Knocks, the Discord, and my personal mentions just went on fire.
So
after he got signed.
The takeaway is the Hornets get an A. We forget everything we said about Brandon Miller. They get an A, and the Mavs get an F because they lost Frankie Smokes. Christian Wood also unsigned Markieff Morris, Theo Pinson, ditto. They signed, Dallas did, Matisse Thybulle to a 3-year, $33 million offer sheet, which the Blazers matched. So no ace wing defender on this roster, unfortunately, since that was a pretty clear need. Nonetheless, I'll just say it. This is a B plus for me. That's with Kyrie Irving being someone I just generally do not trust to be on a team that I want to support or enjoy watching succeed. So, Dan, am I too high, too low with the B plus? What about this offseason stands out most to you?
I think so it's funny because it's a good offseason. And I like the Kyrie Irving deal is just sub-max money, 3 years rather than 4. I feel like that's a really good that's at least a reasonable outcome, especially because of what you gave up to keep him. He might have had more leverage than that. And it allowed you to use your full mid-level exception. I like a lot of the additions here and understand them. I think it was good to go after Matisse Thybulle. The Grant Williams acquisition, the money is fine. The fit is good. Just giving up that 20-30 swap makes me uneasy. It makes me uneasy. So that is something that kind of stands out the most where I'm just like, oh, but they got great value out of dropping down 2 spots. I love just kind of taking the flyer on Omax to get someone in Rashawn Holmes who, frankly, if he's healthy, should be able to play for you. You just have more shooting with Seth Curry. I think they are going to miss Reggie Bullock. Like, you're putting a lot of weight on the shoulders of, I know people have said Grant Williams is the most switchable player, one of the most switchable players in the league. He's not like this wing checking defender. You had that, at least in theory, in Reggie Bullock, who defended a lot of guards. Now it's, okay, Josh Green, or we're going to see Dante Exum in that role. They have Derrick Jones Jr. now as well. I don't know if we mentioned that. And so I get the theory of him. I would probably land with a B plus as well. I would have liked to have, I don't know what they could have done to get a better wing defender. So I don't know how I could give them a huge negative from there, but giving up a 20-30 swap to get Grant Williams and kind of keeping this weird, big man rotation is sort of uneven. And now what's the pathway to Derek Lively getting minutes? Are you just going to bring him along super slowly as a rookie? Again, you could talk me into an A- though, just because of getting off of Davis Bertans and then to drop down 2 spots, getting the player you wanted, and then still ended up getting Rashawn Holmes using part of that trade exception and a first. You know what? Yeah, A- for Dallas. The process of those events, I can't give them an A for the 20-30 swap alone. It makes me wildly uneasy.
Do you wonder if maybe they would have just been better off taking Wallace at 10? Yeah, that's a thought that's kept coming back to me, especially
because
now
the
that they
Thunder like him, or because you like him.
Well, I don't know. I guess he's not quite the can he guard threes? Do you think? Is he just not big enough to do that? I probably not.
I guess if you think he could guard threes, that would make a lot of sense then as to why you would have kept him.
Yeah, I'm just asking the question because I agree generally, to move down and get off money and get the guy that in Lively that you targeted is that was just, I think even on draft night we were that's one of the better moves almost anybody made. I've since kind of started to have reservations about Wallace maybe being really good, and so I'm coming off that a little bit. But yeah, we're right in lockstep. B plus, A minus. Good off season, although how much better is Dallas really relative to the West teams it's trying to climb over in the standings? A little bit probably, because Williams should help and I don't know. Good offseason though.
It's it's weird because I don't know how high I am on them in the context of the Western conference, the larger context of the West. But what opportunities did they miss here this off? And what did they miss on? I mean, I'm uncomfortable with them giving up a 20-30 swap, but I'm not oh, okay, I don't think it was a disaster. If Luka's still there, you're probably fine and everything's hunky dory and Grant Williams will help you. I am going to be fascinated by just their front court rotation. And as we already mentioned, how the perimeter defense is structured. And I also think, they're really high on Jaden Hardy. So that there's overlap there with Case and Wallace a little bit too.
And I think there's some Josh Green extension talk too. I love Josh Green. So, I mean, that I don't know if he's...
They would be an interesting landing spot if he ends up at the minimum for Hamidou Diallo. Just okay,
sure,
we need another physical body. But they went the Derrick Jones Jr. route already. Yeah. He's not even more of a I guess, yeah, you could place him, go get that wing. What he does to you offensively, I know people just say space the floor, screen and roll with him. That's not how it works with Derrick Jones Jr.
And I would just, as you made me think of this, I know we're trying to move fast, but Jones was a really vital part of some zone looks on defense in Miami that were really good several years ago. And so maybe... I was
about to say, how many years ago was that?
Yeah, it was a while, and he hasn't come close. Again, don't go after guys that are leaving the Heat. It doesn't work out. But certainly if you have Kyrie and Luka, even skinny Luka, on the floor at the same time, you might want to think about some zone stuff, and maybe that's the idea behind Derrick Jones Jr.
Do we factor that into the offseason where it's like, oh, Luka's in the best shape of his life?
I mean, what could matter more? Really? Like nothing.
Peak conditioned Luka Doncic would be by far the biggest addition of the Mavericks offseason, even with everything they did.
Right.
A- for me. I'm giving him an A-.
B+, but it's an A+ if Luka actually really stays in this shape and
if he has abs. If he comes back with abs.
I need abs for an A+. All right, you got the Rockets.
To the Houston Rockets. They did a bunch. Fired Steven Silas, hired Ime Udoka, drafted Amen Thompson at number 5, drafted Cam Whitmore at number 20. I have number 25 written down. I'm an idiot. Traded Brooklyn's own 28 second-round pick to Brooklyn for Patty Mills and Milwaukee's 2028 second. They signed Fred VanVleet to a 3-year max deal. There's a team option on the 3rd year, his age 31 season. They signed Jeff Green to a 2-year, $16 million deal, the second season of which is fully non-guaranteed. They signed Jock Landale to a 4-year, $32 million deal, the final 3 seasons of which are non-guaranteed. Then, as part of a 5-team trade, if you thought I was going to mistakenly say they still have Patty Mills, they sent out Josh Christopher, KJ Martin, Patty Mills, Usman Garuba, and Ty Washington for the rights to Alpha Kaba and Dylan Brooks, who as part of this trade signed a 4-year, $86 million contract with $1 million in unlikely incentives per year that could bring it up to a total value of $90 million. It is on a declining scale, his salary, and the deal runs through his age 31 season. They signed Aaron Holiday, Trevor Hudgens, Jermaine Samuel, and Darius Days all got 2-way contracts. And Grant, the biggest news of all, they waived Dacian Nix. ISO King, Dacian.
This is a great offseason. I think they hit on both of their draft picks. I think Thompson was absolutely the right guy there. I think Whitmore is, I mean, we've talked about this plenty, but a guy that was theoretically, top 5, top 7, whatever, falls to 20, you just take him. I don't care what else. You just take that guy, especially if, you're already have a ton of young guys, like just take the flyer, whatever. I've come all the way around on the VanVleet deal just because it's really a 2-year max and it's almost impossible to have that be a bad deal, really, especially for a team that needs someone to organize the offense, to make open shots, to just kind of be a professional. That's a big deal. I love all the short and non-guaranteed and team options and all the other stuff they did. They really preserved a lot of flexibility somehow while spending a bunch of money. Didn't get Brook Lopez. I don't know how we've one of the few deals that everybody seemed to think that was going to happen and then it didn't. I probably would be higher on them, I guess, if they got Lopez. But who knows? Maybe they couldn't have got the second year non-guarantee or partial or whatever on that. The only knock is the Brooks deal. I think I just don't know if it's worth it to me to have his offensive shortcomings on board, even though you do get great defense. I think probably if not for the kind of postseason shenanigans and the just uptick in, I don't know, histrionics and like inflammatory comments and stuff, that if not for that stuff, I think I'd probably just view it as, well, this is an offense defense trade-off. It's a little bit of an overpay for that reason, but now it's kind of like, I don't know. Still, this is an A- for me. And I feel like when I started to say this was a great offseason, you made a face. So I'm very curious where you come down on this.
I guess, I like Amen Thompson more than I did leading into the draft. And so getting him at 4, I prefer Asar Thompson, but I don't view that as a miss. And the Cam Whitmore, just the value they get from him. I feel like you're not criticizing them enough or giving them enough of sort of just this pullback they missed on Brook Lopez and they clearly misread that situation. And now the chain of events that led to the Dylan Brooks contract that got so complicated that his value kept escalating. What deals like they kind of diminish in value after the initial reporting, his just kept climbing. And I think I know Ime Udoka wanted him. Fred VanVleet signing, great. I thought way better fit than James Harden ever was for them, frankly, with what they're trying to do. The two things that I worry about, so I mentioned Dylan Brooks already, but specifically, okay, it's great that you bring in his defense. Okay, who's your second best defender in the starting lineup now, assuming Amen Thompson doesn't start? It's Fred VanVleet. That's a little bit of a problem because does Jabari Smith Jr. make the leap? Big faith in him. I'd love to see more of him at the 5. I think we will see more of him at the 5. However, you sign Landale, you get Jeff Green. What does this say about what you're trying to do at center? Is Alperen Sengun going to have more of a quick hook? Because I don't like that. I think Alperen Sengun is really good. Does that make it harder for you to get to Jabari Smith Jr. at center? I'm not going to like that either. And so it feels like when you look at this roster, there's just still too much log jamminess. What is happening with Kevin Porter Jr. here? Are we just assuming Cam Whitmore? Like, Kevin Porter Jr. is good. One of the best spot-up shooters in the league now. Are you just not going to play Cam Whitmore? He's going to spend a lot of time in the G League. This roster is better. From a pure talent perspective, is better. And late first-round picks, you weren't going to keep Garuba. Washington was drafted last year. Josh Christopher kind of flamed out. That's still just like a weird chain of events, all of which to get Dillon Brooks. And yet your depth chart is still so complicated to where it's, well, someone's going to be left out in the cold who shouldn't be. And it's like, is that optionality or is it an unnecessary logjam where it's like, how many minutes does Jayshawn Tate get with Brooks and Tari Eason here? And the best way to kind of play everybody on the perimeter is to get more of the Jabari Smith Jr. at the 5 minutes. Did you make that a little harder though? And so I just think there were chances. And I'm more worried about the Brooks deal than anything, because I think when you're at this stage of the rebuild, it's okay. Yes, we brought in veterans, but like we can still experiment, and having a 12-man rotation is not the end of the world because we're not making the playoffs. The Brooks deal though, just like and this is all to say, I gave them a B+.
Yeah.
But like there are things here. I thought about like a B minus, because to misread the Brook Lopez situation, I think that deeply, like think about how far into the discussions they got. I mean, you know what? I'm going to give them a B too, because what deal did they win? Oh, like Cam Whitmore, great value. That's an above average offseason still. You didn't win the VanVleet deal. It's just not bad. You didn't win the Dillon Brooks deal. It's declining. So I think you could say, well, it's just not bad. Are they going to be able to rein in his offensive inclinations? That's a bit. The Grizzlies couldn't. What makes us think that Ime Udoka is going to be different? Maybe he will be. It's a B.
I will say, if you're trying to sort of look at the Rockets offseason as an indicator for what the big picture plans are, it's kind of murky just because they had a bunch of high lottery picks already. They're adding really 2 more because Whitmore sort of is that, along with Thompson, obviously, who literally was a high lottery pick. But then you've got all these, fairly high dollar, or relatively speaking, on an annual basis, veterans on short deals. So I would push back a little bit on like the log jamminess doesn't really bother me, because this is clearly kind of like a 1 to 2 year stopgap situation where I guess the theory, and again, this gets into the murkiness because I have to guess at it, is that, by the time Jalen Green is really ready and Jabari Smith Jr. is really ready and Thompson, like maybe you're then trading Fred VanVleet as an expiring contract with other stuff for a star for a longer or something. I can't really figure out exactly what the long-term goals are. I just think in isolation, it made sense to just add some adults and sort of see what happens. And I didn't talk about this enough. I think probably upgrade from Silas to Udoka is the biggest coaching upgrade of any team in the offseason, unless I'm forgetting something. And that might be something that just, especially with a roster loaded with young guys who've kind of gotten to do whatever they wanted, that's not going to be how things go anymore. And so that could really, one, start weeding out guys like Kevin Porter Jr., for example. That's like, this isn't going to be, you're not going to be able to play the way you want to play here. So we're going to move you. And it might just sort of give you a better sense of like, what really is Jalen Green? Because we have an idea, like there's this Zach LaVine-ness to him that, maybe that's what it is, but maybe it's something totally different. And now that there's accountability and organization on both ends of the floor, we'll get a real clear picture. So I just
benefits from Fred VanVleet's arrival more than anyone else.
Oh my God. Yeah, for sure. He just take the 5 worst shots he takes per game away and to replace them with like theoretically open looks, or just he doesn't shoot them at all. And suddenly, his inefficiency is like, you can deal with it. I think that's right. I like the offseason. I concede though, like there's like a mishmash of stuff happening here that doesn't all seem to square.
I'm going to go B+, because you mentioned maybe I'm not factoring in the coaching bump like on the court enough. And the other thing too is I like that based off who they were linked to over the off, but not going for Harden, for instance.
They didn't go for Harden. Totally. Yeah.
It's what that tells you though, and informing the future. And I'm saying I didn't weight this enough, which is why they're getting a B+, is they're not just going to go out and make a trade where it's because this felt more like we don't want to send OKC the 5th pick rather than we need to make the playoffs right now. And what that makes you believe is if we fast forward to around the trade deadline and they're making moves, it's because they're making a higher end move
Yeah.
rather than like, think about what the Hawks did with DeJounte Murray, where it was probably more justifiable for them. Like, you're not going to go after the 50th best player consolidate into the 50, 60th best player in the NBA. You're going to aim even higher.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was a danger where it was, oh, we're trying to accelerate this too much by going for James Harden's better than the 60th best player in the NBA, but you're like too committed to acceleration. This was more about, I think, getting better about the pick that they owed to OKC, but while improving sort of the circumstances both on and off the court. And so I just wasn't giving them enough credit for that. B+.
And I think too, just the last thing I'd say, Houston is one of those markets that like your cap space actually does matter. I think it is a desirable place to be. So having the flexibility of all these non-guarantees and all these team options, granted like a year or 2 years down the line in VanVleet's case, preserving some of that flexibility to where if you really needed to, you probably could clear significant space. All these rookie scale deals are going to balloon pretty soon. So that's an issue too, but I think we're going to weed some of those out where like you're not prevented at all from just saying, yeah, we could get to 40 million. Like we could figure that out, that's on the table too. So I think it's one of the more interesting off seasons, but yeah, I think we're pretty close on it.
Yeah, I mean, you talked me into what would they have gotten for you if they landed Brook Lopez? This might have been an A+.
I think it would have been a flat A for me. Although like the money would have mattered. I wonder how much they
for 2 or 3 years. It absolutely would not have mattered.
Well, that's right. I just did the VanVleet. I wonder though, like how much of this, because you may be right that they sort of misjudged that situation. I wonder if it was just Lopez kind of being ready to take a big deal and then kind of just having the thought of like, yeah, but I could go back and could contend in a place that has resurrected my career. It feels more to me like he just kind of had an epiphany and just was like, no, I can't do it.
Like, were they offering him like 3 and like 70 or something, and he just decided to take 2 and 48 from Milwaukee?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. That brings us to the Memphis Grizzlies. Another really interesting offseason for
this division might have had collectively the most interesting. I mean, the Pelicans did nothing. We'll get to them. But like the Spurs were like kind of all over the place a little bit.
Yeah. So I guess the place to start is the Grizzlies now have Marcus Smart, acquired from Boston in a 3-teamer that also involved the Washington Wizards. Tyus Jones is gone as a part of that, as are the number 25 pick and a 2024 Golden State Warriors first rounder. Dylan Brooks also gone. We just talked about him. That was essentially structured as a sign and trade that involved the Hawks and the Thunder. Desmond Bane signed a 5-year submax, I believe, just a little bit, $197 million extension. Derrick Rose on board for the minimum. This was another interesting one. Traded 3 future seconds for swap rights on the lesser of Phoenix and Washington's 2024 and 2031st and Isaiah Todd. Drafted Gigi Jackson II and Tariq Baberovich. Sure, I didn't say that right. At 45 and 56, respectively. Did I miss anything of consequence there?
I do not think you did.
So. I guess I won't give my grade yet because I led with it last time. Start with the Marcus Smart deal.
I was going to say the one thing they didn't decide. Well, and we'll just get into that because that's more of a note. I didn't love the Marcus Smart deal basically for any team other than the Wizards. And I understand so you look at their catch and shoot percentages, Dylan Brooks and Marcus Smart, pretty similar over the past 3 years. The difference is that defenses react to Marcus Smart differently. Like they will actually guard him more. So yes, that's an upgrade. Do you think he's an upgrade as a point guard over Tyus Jones? The answer is no. As a passer and decision maker, the answer is no.
Yeah.
I think he's a better player overall. He's not an upgrade as an actual point guard. Now, the fact that he can play and close alongside John Morant matters. And now you've also rolled him into, he's like a wing. So you play him with Bane because of the way he defends, and you play him with Ja. You can, when Ja's back from his suspension. So you can do that. It felt like they were trying to check too many boxes for what they ultimately gave up, which was 2 first-round picks, including, I like the Warriors pick might have been the best asset of anything, including Jones and what turned out to be Marcus Sasser that they gave up. The player needs to be better than Marcus Smart. And it also makes me wonder, he slipped defensively a little bit last year. And so you paid kind of peak value for someone who might already be not on the steep decline, but not as effective as he was previously because of the wear and tear Boston put on him. And maybe I'm galaxy braining this because I've kind of thought I didn't like the deal for Boston. Like I understand the 2 first-round pick value. I viewed it more as they extended Porzingis, so I don't know what to make of that. But it felt like from their perspective, it was, we're going to capitalize on getting rid of Marcus Smart more than we're trying to get Porzingis when that framework. And I know they had a previous deal to get Porzingis that didn't include Marcus Smart. I understand that Marcus Smart can fit, but if you were going to roll all of these boxes or want this one player to wear all of these hats, that player needed to be a better shooter than Marcus Smart is going to be. And you still have the ability to go out and make moves, but like you didn't ruin any flexibility, but like, I don't think getting him made you good enough to say, well, we still don't need that move that we're all talking about, which is we need this bigger wing.
I think that's a really good way to put it, because this is a C+ for me. And a lot of that has to do with, I think Desmond Bane is worth that. And I think deciding you're done with Dylan Brooks is a positive. The Smart thing is, I don't know what to make of it for all the reasons you said. I think this is essentially a bet on, because they are going to ask him to do like really the work of Jones and Brooks, basically. Right. Like, and so those are two guys that mattered a lot. They're asking him to do both. And it's a bet on the fact that the slippage, I think people that, watched Smart last year, people in Boston particularly, would say like he was not the same defender that he had been. I mean, it's crazy, but he was Defensive Player of the Year 2 years ago. I don't know if in hindsight that's going to age all that well, but he was not close to that last season, and he's basically settled in as like a 33% three-point shooter. I do think it's a little unfair to say, like, but it's not wrong, but to say like, well, Tyus Jones is just a better point guard. That is accurate. I think I look at it more as like Smart just replaces Brooks in the lineups that I really care about, and he's better at basically everything on offense than Brooks is, especially if he has to make a decision with the ball that isn't just take the worst possible shot you can imagine, which Brooks excels at. So yeah, I think in the first, whatever was it, 25 games that Morant suspended or 20? What, I can't remember what it is. 25. Like that's going to hurt a little bit, because he's basically your starting point guard, and he's probably not as good offensively at all that stuff as Jones is. But I think in the like fully realized version of this Grizzlies team, Smart, at least in theory, if he hasn't really fallen off a ton, or if he can sort of slow the decline, I like him there in the Brooks role. I think him, Bane, and Morant together, I love that 1, 2, 3. There's such a diversity of skill between those three guys that it works for me. But you outlined them. I share them. There are real questions about, is he being asked to do a little bit too much? And bigger picture, they just still need another guy. That they still need somebody else to like up the ceiling of this team.
And yeah, I'm just wondering how much better they are, even if the most optimistic vision pans out. Maybe it's Zaire Williams hits you to jump from Santi Aldama. The other thing that they didn't do, and I don't know if you gave your grade yet on this, but the decision when you have so much room beneath the first apron, unless you just don't value him, but following the Brandon Clark Achilles injury, I don't know how you don't. Like, you could have made Xavier Tillman a free agent now, handled that deal, and just like the deal would have given him a raise. Maybe he takes a little bit less on the back end of it then. And you also get one of his years out of the way while you still have all this room under the first apron. So I was a little bit surprised that they didn't go that route. Not a huge, because I don't think I'm probably lower on Xavier Tillman than most. But like, Steven Adams isn't going to be around forever, and he can do some of the dirty work that Steven Adams does. And like, do you always want Jaren Jackson Jr. to be like a solo big at some point? Maybe that's the end game here. I was just a little, it was just like, why didn't you do this now? Type of thing.
That's fair. They're a C+ for me. C+ for me for the Grizzlies.
Oh, they got a D+ for me.
That's a big gap.
You know what? The Desmond Bane contract, people didn't think he was a no-brainer. You got that without a player option. I will give them a C-.
Okay, perfect. So now we're in the neighborhood. You have the Pelicans. This will be quick.
No, I don't really feel like having the Pelicans. You want to take them? No. But so the New Orleans Pelicans, I wonder if we're going to diverge here, but the New Orleans Pelicans drafted Jordan Hawkins at number 14, signed Herb Jones to a 4-year, $53.8 million deal with no options that runs through his age 28 season. They waived, then re-signed EJ Liddell to a 2-year, $6.2 million deal. I believe both seasons are guaranteed. They signed Cody Zeller. They did lose Josh Richardson. He went to the Heat. They lost Jackson Hayes to the Lakers. They waived Garrett Temple. Don't worry, he landed with the Toronto Raptors. And Willie Hernan-Gomez is now he signed with FC Barcelona, I believe. Grant, thoughts on the Pelicans offseason?
Before I give my grade, I was thinking about this morning. We were you more so than me, high on the Pelicans at this time last year, right? And that was justified because after a couple months in the season, they were like the second seed. I forget what the dates are. There's one of those things we repeat all the time during the season, but they were second in the West in like, I don't know, November, December, something like that. And this is the next powerhouse. They're rising. And then everything went to shit and Zion had his off season. And suddenly, I think most people would be much lower on the Pelicans now than they were a year ago. And I wonder why. Like, how much if you think about it, the roster is not meaningfully different. And
right.
and maybe the reason is Zion has gone another year without staying healthy. Brandon Ingram missed a bunch of time. CJ McCollum is a year older. Jonas Valanciunas is a year older. Like, maybe that's the reason. But isn't there a case to be made that like we should just be as high or higher on the Pelicans as we were a year ago? This isn't an offseason question. This is just like a macro Pelicans thing that's kind of been bugging me.
The only reason you shouldn't be is if, okay, you just don't trust Zion Williamson to ever play in more than half the season, which I think is a fair skepticism to have. But this is not a team that in theory needed to do anything major. I think my issues, if we want to start with the issues.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I have no issue with the Herb Jones contract.
Zero.
Build up the goodwill with the player, and the deal is good enough to where it's like, oh, we'll lock that down now rather than worrying if he got to free agency. I know we talk a lot about, well, our team's actually going to give him a mega offer if his 3-point shot doesn't improve. He shot well later end of the season on ultra low volume. I don't think his, sort of floor game in open space came along as much as the Pelicans would have liked. And I have questions about that. The guy is going to be an all defense candidate for the next half decade. This goes through his age 28 season, so it's not super old. He will peak at 9.2% of the salary cap, if that. Don't have a problem with, don't be one of those people that's like, well, they ruined flexibility. No, they didn't ruin cap space. And if anything, a year from now, he's more tradable because he didn't just sign his new deal and he's making more money to where now it's easier to match in other sort of permutations. That was a home run deal. I'm actually shocked that he agreed to it. I would have taken Kobe Buffkin or Keontae George at number 14. Those were the direct picks that went after them. You can't get too mad. Grady Dick would have been way better. He wasn't on the board. And look, Kobe Buffkin, a lot of people are lower on him now. I just trust kind of the finishing at the rim and his ability to defend and play off guard. I can't hate on it. I don't know enough about how Jordan Hawkins' shooting, is going to translate. That should probably be fine. I think my actual biggest qualm, I would have liked to have seen them been more aggressive in diversifying their front court and moving on from Jonas Valanciunas.
Yep.
Was there that floor spacing 5 out there? The answer is, could they have been trying to get into the Kristaps Porzingis sweepstakes since they have some of these larger contracts? Sure. Porzingis already went and got injured on another lower body injury, plantar fascia. You can't hate on that. Miles Turner's not eminently available. What are the names? Like, you weren't going to work out a sign and trade for Brook Lopez. And so I'm giving them an A- because there's probably things that they could have done to, all right, should we have gotten another point guard in here to where what happens if, like, who is their best, like, if Jose Alvarado just kind of doesn't hit next year, who's the best point guard on this roster? Like, is it just going to be Kyra Lewis Jr., in which case, we can't move him to deduct the tax because he's our best point guard.
Right.
And maybe they'll move him before the season. This is what I want to make clear. Their ceiling, and you cannot say this about every team, with this current personnel right now, even with, will Jonas Valanciunas close? Will he not close? Is they won an NBA title. They didn't need to do anything major. They're going to be fine. If Zion Williamson is healthy, if he plays in, give me 53 games of Zion Williamson, this is a top 4 team in the West. I don't know. What does he look like in the playoffs? Yada, yada, yada. They didn't need to do anything major. If you're going to make more of a macro decision, you need to wait. Maybe if he gets injured again, do you do something at the trade deadline? Do you make it next off season? They were clearly interested in Scoot Henderson, not at the expense of Zion Williamson. And you and I had a debate on that. They didn't need to do that. They didn't need to get rid of Zion. They didn't need to get rid of Brandon Ingram. Are you like, should they be extending Brandon Ingram right now? Do you want to penalize them for that? I don't know why you would. This is an A- because, and I might even I would have liked to have seen them been more aggressive in chasing trades, but I'm also looking at the landscape. What and who was realistically out there for them to chase? And they just didn't have, if you wanted to say, well, man, this is a team that really should have gotten in with the Monte Morris sweepstakes. They're in this situation right now when they're giving up that type of salary matching to get even a $9 million player. You're not giving up Dyson Daniels for Monte Morris. You're not giving up, or do you even want to give up Larry Nance Jr. at this point? And then it's like, well, teams aren't just going to accept Kyra Lewis as filler. You're going to have to attach something to that. So, is Cody Zeller the perfect sort of backup? Or if you want to call him Zion, Giannis, Larry Nance, and then there's Cody Zeller as your fourth big. I don't hate it. I'd prefer Bismack Biyombo just sitting there. I know he doesn't space the floor, isn't as good of a passer as Cody Zeller. I don't care. It's just what did people want them to do? And the fact that they did the Herb Jones deal now, I think is a bonus, not some sort of hamstringing decision that it's been painted as.
All right. So I have to say,
was that more impassioned than you thought it was going to get on the Pelicans?
The word this is the most I'm going to move a grade because of your impassioned defense. So he's basically like you were talking to me, because I was at a C- on this, on the thinking of, what about a consolidation trade? Why is Valanciunas still here? All this other stuff. But your case for, they didn't really have the ability to do the types of things that I, in a perfect world, would have liked them to do. That being said, the only thing I really objectively liked is the Herb Jones deal, which we've lauded sufficiently now. So I'm going to move from a C- because it was unfair to say, well, you should have done all these other things when those weren't really on the table, to a C+, which still gives us probably our biggest disparity in grades.
I bumped it. Pelicans fans, my Venmo is DFavalley2033. You can compensate me for talking Grant into an above average grade.
Above average grade. Yeah. Again, C+ is good. No, I think you're right. I think I was too low on them. And especially that's silly because I led this whole thing with like, why shouldn't we think the Pelicans are just as good as they were a year ago? This is one of those where the specifics with respect to like what was actually a plausible thing that could have happened for this team, just make it such that like they didn't, no Miles Turner, no Porzingis. There wasn't
you could probably take just bigger issue with them not actively pursuing like guard upgrades, whereas like Shake Milton would have been really good for this team. Like that would be something you could take issue with more than just the front court player they need. I don't think he's available. It's not Pascal Siakam. Joel Embiid would be just an interesting proposition for this team. I think the theory of Porzingis, but you have Zion on your team. And look, even Ingram's been injured. And you want to get into Kristaps Porzingis business? No fucking thank you. I'm still surprised you're as low as a C+. I guess I would say the guard thing is the big where like you could have went and like there was an upgrade to make at the point guard spot.
I think too, we could be talking this time next year and this season has gone the same or worse than 21-22 or 22-23 for the same reasons, which is like Zion can't stay healthy and Ingram just, is in and out and McCollum is aging. And like at that point, I think it will. So if we end up in basically coming off a similar year for all the same reasons, then it may in hindsight be fair to criticize them for maybe they didn't look hard enough at moving Zion while there was still some value and he wasn't just about to log another 20-something game season or whatever it is. But that's based on so much speculation. That's kind of an unfair thing to put out there.
The other thing is that I don't like Zion's peak value might have already passed. And so you're kind of in the situation where if Zion just isn't who the player you expect to be, you're totally fucked. Right. Anyway. Yeah, and so what are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
And so I'm just like we had the debate and I considered if Portland would take Zion for the number 3 pick, we were that high on Scoot, you especially. Yeah. Like I became more smitten with him after Summer League. Like you were on the Scoot Henderson bandwagon way before. I think even before he came out of the womb, if I'm not mistaken. So, but like it wasn't out there. And if you're looking for something nuclear, and I'm not talking, there is at some point if Zion's healthy this year at the trade deadline and they don't approach that with a sense of aggressive urgency, that's a separate grade. That's a separate thing to talk about. It's not the offseason. We fast forward to next offseason and they're still kind of nonchalant if they don't win the title or make the conference finals, or if Zion's not healthy. That's when you like he is he's going into his age 23 season.
Right.
Or he's still 23. But I think, no, it's his age 23 season he'll be going into. Like, this is, maybe it's the last offseason of kind of viewing it this way, but it was still relative to the options available. It's the best way to view this summer for them. And I actually think if your grade, it makes more sense to me is like, well, like, why didn't they just go out and get like a guard, like a veteran guard for so cheap?
Yeah, that's fair. All right, we got one more here. This is the San Antonio Spurs. Drafted some tall guy from France, Victor Wembanyama. I'm not familiar. We don't need to belabor that one. Got Chetty Osman, Lamar Stevens, and a future second by kind of sliding into the Strus deal between Miami and Cleveland. Did something basically similar, getting Reggie Bullock, 2 future seconds and 2030 swap rights from Dallas for getting into the Grant Williams sign and trade between Boston and Dallas. Acquired Campaign, a future second and cash from Phoenix. Signed Trey Jones for 2 years, $19 million. Love that. Signed Julian Champagnie. Is that right? Am I getting that right? Close enough. Champagnie for 4 years, $12 million. I don't know if it's a team option or non-guaranteed, but basically the last 3 years, the Spurs are not necessarily on the hook for of those 4 years. Lost Keita Bates-Diop, Romeo Langford, Gorgie Jang, and also gave Greg Popovich a 5-year, $80 million extension.
Yeah.
That's wild. So, I mean, I don't know what you do with that, but that was a significant thing that the Spurs did. Otherwise, like, got Wemby, but other than that, kind of uneventful, other than just kind of finding ways to insert themselves into deals as like a third party to kind of grease the skids. I don't know what to do with the Wembanyama draft pick. It was great, franchise altering, but it was also like not a decision basically. So this is a B+ for me, just because I liked the opportunistic kind of bent to the offseason where we're going to just find ways to extract assets from other teams that can't just deal directly with each other. And I think the Trey Jones deal, 2 years, 19 is terrific. I think he's a low end starter at worst, and can be much better than that. And he's getting paid like 8th, 9th man money. So yeah, pretty high on it. Even if we just, I don't know if you factor in Wembanyama and what he's going to mean, it's an A+, but I just don't know what to do with that.
You can't, because there wasn't a decision to make there. It's not like there was a debate. So they don't get credit for Victor Wembanyama. With that said, I still give them an A.
Nice.
I love the Champagnie deal. I love getting Reggie Bullock, getting the 2030 Dallas swap. They made excellent use of their cap space, and the Thunder did not. And that's fair to say. Now, I have a quibble. Oh, actually, two other things. One other thing. Getting Dominic Barlow back on a two-way, I'm just, based off like his just size, wingspan, like physical tools, and some of the flashes he's shown on ball offensively, how is there not like an NBA deal out there?
Yeah, he really stood out at Summer League. I think I'm surprised someone didn't come in and just give him a fully guaranteed
So
deal.
Still kind of having the like option of him just being there is a win for them. The Greg Popovich deal, I didn't even have that in my notes. I totally forgot about that. I love that just like there's certainty there, and it just makes it forget about Wembanyama. The message that might send to other players that are just like, if you're talking trades eventually, oh, Pop's under contract, like, I can go play for Pop for more than a second. Right. I think that matters. My quibble would be, which of these deals that you pulled off would have prevented you from throwing your cap space to inflate the deal on Austin Reeves for the Lakers, or another restricted free agent? Maybe not like Cam Johnson for the Nets. I don't think there was enough restricted free agent like PJ Washington wouldn't have been it for me. I also would have been I would prefer Brook Lopez here to play with Wemby than the Rockets. Like, could you have been in on that and like just been like, hey, Brook, we'll just give you the max for one. You want a 1 year, like, what is it, $40-something million deal? Like, all right, they couldn't go that high, but so they could have done something like that. That's just my only qualm. But because the players that I would have been okay with them doing that for were so specific, and the list probably tops out at 3 when you're looking at like, I can't be like, oh, and you don't get an A+ because you didn't do anything groundbreaking. I think you were just smart. And if the Wembanyama pick was made and there was a debate between him and Scoot, and you made the Wembanyama pick, like I said to you, I saw his worst game of Summer League, and I thought he was going to be like the greatest player ever.
Do you think if they go, what would have been 4 for like 98 or like 101 for Reeves? I forget where it would have topped out. The Lakers just they just match, right? Like, is there any chance they get him, get Austin Reeves if
If
they
you
go
don't
that
want
high?
Austin Reeves, I understand that, but you could have gone like there was an in between. Like you could give a smaller poison pill than like you didn't have to go 9 figures.
I mean,
Like you
I
could
would
have
have paid him for 9 figures.
no, I'm
Frankly, like,
saying, but if you didn't want him, you could
yeah.
have done something like 480 and just been like, we really fucked with the Lakers books.
Do you think that precludes them from getting into the sign and trades though? Like, would that have tied things up between, so they maybe don't get Bullock in that swap, or they don't get Osman and Stevens and, I forget, a future second or something.
So
I wonder if,
it ties up your cap space for what, 48 hours?
yeah.
They didn't make the Cleveland deal because I guess because you agree to it earlier, but like, I think the most important thing they did with their cap space, I mean, even getting campaign is like another ball handler. I get it makes sense, but like that didn't happen. The Spurs deal with Reggie Bullock and Grant Williams, that leaked. That was complete on July 12th.
Yeah.
You had time to go out there and be like, hey,
to mess up the Lakers' plans.
now maybe there was some urgency with the Cavs deal because they wanted Strus so bad, but like if you miss out on Jetty Osman, who gives you some shooting and waving Lamar Stevens and a 20-30 second, then okay. Like,
right. No, great offseason. I just, it's kind of funny that like we're just not considering Wembanyama, but we just can't do it. So that's gonna do it though for our sixth and final offseason division grade extravaganza bonanza. So Dan, unless you have anything to add, I will take us out by encouraging everyone. First of all, thanking everyone for listening, watching, participating. If you are, commenting on any of the Twitter links we put out, or, just getting in there on the mentions on @HardwoodKnocks on Twitter and TikTok, @Hardwood_Knocks on Instagram. If you're not already doing this, I don't know how you're listening to us if you aren't, but please rate, review, subscribe, whether you're on Apple, whether you're on Spotify, whether you're watching us on YouTube. Leave us comments, tell your friends, share our links that we put out, that Dan so conscientiously puts out through all of our social channels. If you have done all those things, also you can get our merch, which to the link to which is in the podcast and YouTube description. And if you have done all that stuff, thanks. No more requests, no notes. And we will close as per usual by shouting out the one and only Frank Ntilikina and apologizing to Jared Allen.